and get you another story, and this is related to the memoirs. As you can see right here, this is the book, The Presidential Years by Pranab Mukherjee. Now, excerpts of this book have been out, but the whole book now was released yesterday. Lots of things that have been mentioned. Let's quickly put them on screen one by one. What exactly does the book say? So, we are going to put this to a discussion. Citizen Mukherjee's presidential years, a lot of things that he says, but can Netas still learn from his political wisdom? Why do we say this? Let's put that on screen. What all has he said? First of all, let's see if we have the excerpts of the book. The excerpts of the book, what exactly has he said on Modi? So, on Narendra Modi, he has said Modi 1.0, that is 2014 to 2019, failed to ensure the smooth functioning of parliament. Now, this was the observation of Pranab Mukherjee as president. He says Modi must listen to dissenting voices. Note the importance of this advice coming in posthumously from Pranab Mukherjee for Narendra Modi government at a time when they are battling farmer protests. And he also says that Modi must speak more often in parliament, listen to dissenting voices and speak more often in parliament. What else does he say? He then said that Modi's stopover, remember that famous 2015 stopover in Lahore? He said that it was unnecessary and uncalled for. Now, it's not just all Modi. He has spoken about the Congress party also. For the Congress party, he says the Congress lost focus after I became president. Sonia Gandhi lost grip and was unable to handle affairs of the party, whereas Dr. Manmohan Singh and his prolonged absence from parliament put an end to any personal contact with MPs. Now, there's one important point that Pranab Mukherjee mentions. Let's see if we can put those graphics on screen or not. On Pranab Mukherjee, in one whole paragraph saying, if I had not become president and if I had continued to be in active politics, what all I would have ensured. Now, this I personally feel is the big highlight of this book. When Pranab Mukherjee says, if I had continued in politics, he says, number one, would have ensured Mamta's continuity in the UPA coalition. Remember, Mamta had walked out. Number two, would have brought back Shivraj Patil or Sushil Kumar Shinde in Maharashtra, because Maharashtra was badly handled, according to him. Then, wouldn't have allowed the formation of Telangana, an important, a very, very important point that has been made. And number four, and the most important, would have ensured Congress did not face the 2014 drubbing. I think that, according to me, all of the other things are musings, but this is a key highlight of this particular book. Let me now introduce our guests this evening to discuss this book. Mr. PKD Nambiar is a political analyst, supports the Bharatiya Janata Party. Mr. Rashid Kidwai, author and visiting fellow of the ORF, knows the Congress Party and is functioning very, very closely. He's written a book also. We also have Kapish Mehra, Managing Director of Rupa Publications. Thank you very much, Kapish, for joining us right here. Let's begin with you first. To publish a book like this, the story of the former president, narrated by him at a time when brother and sister are squabbling, do you think that the insights over here are something that politicians must consider extremely dear? Amazing insights in this book.
Well, thanks so much. I think the insights, like you rightly mentioned, are quite amazing. I would probably broaden the base and say it isn't just politicians who should read this book, but just anybody who's a citizen of India and is interested in the current affairs and the going on of what is happening in the country from the last 50 years and onwards. Simply because this is about a man who has seen it all, hasn't he? And from the highest office of the land, and has handled with grace two different prime ministers, personalities, political parties, and yet had a background which, before he was president, was, as we tend to forget, was an active member of a major political party. So he has done that. He has donned that role and done that very successfully. Yet at the same time, held his ground. And while you mentioned a few interesting aspects of the book, there are actually many more. His views on demonetization, the day when GST was announced, the fact that he actually held his ground to Barack Obama and said that I won't sit in the car with you, but that's how it works as per protocol.
Also, how he got wet in the rain during
yes,
26
how
January.
he got wet in the rain. And to the fact that he held his ground on the Arunachal Pradesh issue, how he thought judiciary shouldn't overreach, etc., etc. There are, I mean, every second or third page gives you an insight into the politics of India and a perspective that can only be seen from the highest land. So really, I think this is the go-to book if anybody who's interested in political affairs, current affairs of this country should read, because it comes from the man himself and from the highest office of the land.
I second that. I second that. Rashid Kidwai, you know, all that Pranab Mukherjee said in this book, the excerpts, his comments on Modi, his comments on Sonia Gandhi, Dr. Manmohan Singh, he spoke freely, frankly, and for people who know him, they know that this is classic Pranab Mukherjee. This is how he was, right?
Absolutely, Sanket. This is a delightful book, and I think Rupa must be complimented for bringing out this book. But there are a lot of things which have remained unsaid. It's typical of Pranab Mukherjee. He used to say there are three things, A and B, and the C would never come out. In this book also, I'm going through it, it's very clear. It's all right to say that he would have managed Mamta. The big question is, see, why Mamta Banerjee left Congress? If there was one person responsible for Mamta's exit from Congress, it was Mr. Pranab Mukherjee. Anyone who knows a little bit about Bengal would vouch for this.
And I think Rashid Kidwai, I think what he mentioned, I've gone through that paragraph. I think what he mentions is not the exit of Mamta from Congress, but the exit of Mamta Banerjee's party from the UPA. I think that's... Yeah.
Sanket, I am aware of it. Pranab Mukherjee becomes president in July. In September, she leaves. Now, all those problems relating to FDI and other things, are demands, were actually, 2-3 years old. It was not something new. And Mr. Mukherjee was at one point of time, he was heading, over 20, GOMs. Anyway, I don't want to get into it. I think this is a delightful book because Pranab Mukherjee has held ground on many issues, including, Article 356. Everyone criticizes, but he says Article 356, in spite of, grossly being misused, needs to be there. There are several important observations he has made, but I think he also suffered from this sense of, illusion of grandeur when he says that he could have stopped Narendra Modi. I don't think any serious student of politics would say that, would second that.
Oh, no. Again, quoting the book, he says, I would have ensured that the Congress would not have received the 2014 drubbing. So he does not, not imply that he would beat Narendra Modi. I think what pained him was the pitiful 44 of the Congress party in 2014. Rashid
Absolutely, Sanket. Someone can turn around and say it was because of retro tax, it's because of he was finance minister. The entire political management was done by him. It's all right to say that, I would not have allowed Telangana to be created. Now, who stopped, the creation of second reorganization of States Commission?
Correct.
Mr. Moily wanted it. He was law minister.
Well said.
Prime Minister wanted it. Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, who was heading a Congress committee on smaller states, he stopped it.
Yeah. I think that's well put. So all the things that he mentions that he would have done this, he would have done that, could perhaps be a sense of grandeur, a false sense of grandeur, says Mr. Rashid Kidwai. But PKD Nambiar, let me now come to you. A lot has been said about Narendra Modi, and that's why my first question, what all can politicians learn from Pranab Mukherjee's wisdom, right? He says, Modi 1.0 failed to ensure smooth functioning of parliament. He then says, Modi must listen to dissenting voices and speak more often in parliament. Comments on Lahore, I'm not getting into that. But most important on Modi is this point, on his relationship with world leaders. Pranab Mukherjee says that he opposes expressions like personal friendship. There's nothing like personal friendship. Nations are friendly, individuals are not. He gives his own example of Bangladesh.
No, I think, Sanket, we all know that the kind of relationship both Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister and the former President, they shared such a wonderful rapport. in many gestures, in both the leaders have expressed that in public, both Mr. Modi and as well as the late Pranab Da. I believe that it was one of the finest relationship between a president and a prime minister could have ever had. And we all know that the Narendra Modi government has also bestowed the Bharat Ratna to Pranab Mukherjee.
See, we know all of this. We know what the Modi government has done, but would you care to comment on what he thinks about Narendra Modi? He says Modi plays up personal equations with world leaders a bit too much. To take such relations as true is absurd. He also says that he must listen to dissenting voices. So in the middle of this farm protest, do you feel that these words are very important?
Every leader have got his own style of functioning, and that on another person, whether it is you or me, or for that matter to a great former president, can have his own opinion. But I believe the personal rapport in many times in the diplomatic relationships helps in terms of communicating it better, and that is something which very well known to everybody. I'm sure that yes, he's a politician and a former. He's not only just a former finance minister or former president, he was also former external affairs minister.
Yeah.
But I personally believe that Narendra Modi as a leader has been able to bring so much of a personal comfort between leaders. If two leaders have a personal comfort, that transform the entire relationship into a different level. So I believe that always helps. But of course, we are nobody to...
So different views.
Pranab Mukherjee as a leader. But I wanted to say one thing.
Yeah, sure.
The comment of it sometimes gives so much of a knowledge coming from a veteran like this who had seen in and out of 50 years of Indian politics. His own feeling of sadness for the Congress apathy in 2014, merely becoming a 44-seat party from a ruling party.
I knew you would bring this up.
New Congress leadership should be able to learn from him and to create an opposition which at least can stay afloat.
That's my point. No. So every political party has got to learn something. Can they pick cues from this book? Kapish, I want to come to you.
Everybody, irrespective of any political party, I think a person at his stature, from him coming in, everybody should read this book, and everybody will be able to learn.
No,
something.
I agree. It's a pretty engaging read. Kapish, do you think that there are lessons for the political fraternity and political leaders on political management in this book?
Well, to be honest, I think there are lessons for all of us, who are residents of this country to learn from. Yes, of course, the political leaders, because we tend to cherry pick. I mean, he, for example, has also complimented the fact that Modi came with a decisive mandate and had a unique view on inviting the SAARC leaders at his, first inauguration and swearing-in ceremony. At the same time, like you rightly said, he did criticize Modi on a different aspect. And same thing he has gone ahead and done with Manmohan Singh versus others. But I think the core thing that comes out of this book from his voice is the fact that he has a nuanced understanding of Indian politics and the fine art of diplomacy and the balancing between the right and sometimes the not so right. And it seems that that is something that we tend to ignore. And the statesmanship in politics seems to have kind of been eroded with the going away of legends like Shri Pranab Mukherjee. Correct. There are very few people who can actually comment on both sides of the spectrum and yet be respected. Now, for all the debate that we've had while I was listening to the other two panelists, one thing was certain: there was respect and there was acceptance of Dr. Mukherjee's views. Now, that in itself is very difficult for a person to achieve in today's politics,
Correct.
unless, of course, he has reached a statesman-like stature.
Consensus builder.
After having been a part of a political party and then gone ahead to take on an office which needs you to be neutral. So that in itself, I think, showcases various aspects of Pranab Mukherjee's personality. Okay. And as I mentioned, he has put his foot down on a variety of issues, whether it has been the Congress government or the BJP. Now, there are people who can fight about what if and what not. But the fact is that here was a man who was considered rightfully the Dada of Indian politics. And everybody went to him for advice, former or current PM.
Okay, last comment, Mr. Kidwai. Why do you feel that he will also have a questionable legacy? Like whatever he has written, his comments will be taken with a pinch of salt. Why?
Because he was a very, consummate, very participatory, politician. In page 22, for instance, he has mentioned that he was expecting the BJP under Narendra Modi to be getting 195 to 200 seats in Lok Sabha. And in that scenario, he would not have sounded Mr. Modi. He would have gone for Congress if Congress was able to cobble a coalition. Now, this is a very controversial statement, that he has made. And there are several observations are there which actually, would not be very pleasing or satisfying for BJP. BJP is trying to own up all the political legacies which have been sort of have differences or been opposed to Nehru Gandhi family. Mr. Mukherjee in his book has come down very heavily on this ordinance culture, the government bringing
Correct.
or introducing several ordinances instead of bringing bills and acts through parliament. So all these things are there. It's a difficult book to accept for either for the BJP sympathizers or Congress supporters. I think Pranab Mukherjee has, by writing his memoirs in rather candid manner, he, as I said, he was an active politician. He had ambition to become Prime Minister, which he could not. But his effort is very good. It's very good. It's a valuable document for all students of history,
I think that's well
politics,
said.
and citizens.
Don't read it like a book. Read it like a valuable document with insights.
It's subjective account.
Subjective account. Absolutely. Absolutely. But one thing, something that you cannot miss. Mr. PKD Nambiar, Kapish, as well as Rashid Kidwai, thank you very much. This would make for a good weekend read, everyone. Do make sure to get your copy. Kapish has made sure that this is now available. Thank you very much. I've run out of time, Kapish, but we'll discuss this further as we go along. Thank you very much. Stop in for a short